Folks, let's get started. Thank you. Let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for being here today. I think we'll start with self-introductions. I'm Kevin Reitsky, the chair for this committee and also NERC commissioner.
Tom Vanderwood, Director of Transportation for NERC. And if I may, Ishan to my right is going to be handing around a sign-in sheet. So if you did not sign in when you came in, please do so. That's helpful for us when we put together the minutes. And
Ishan Pare, NERC staff.
Ryan Lusick, Dry Cleaning, Indiana.
Mark O'Dell, Thomas Chesterton.
Kelly Wenger, Nixie.
Dean Button, City of Hammond.
Jeff Hewitt, Cherville.
Bob Thompson.
Bob Thompson, Valparaiso. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Max Raylander, Valparaiso.
David Wright, Gary Transit.
Michelle Murday, Cruz on Northwest Indiana Forum.
Candace Eklund, NERC. Meredith Stillwell, NERC.
Scott Pruitt, Fisher Jr.
Kelly Wheeler, NERC.
Scott Trader, SCH.
Noel Bayer, NDOT. Melody Shreves,
Jake Tamara, Public Fairman and Cypher.
Alex Wesker, Public Fairman and Cypher.
Stephen Hughes, NERC.
Grace Bunninger, NERC.
Scott Weber, NERC.
Ed Barlow, yeah.
Greg Fogowski, Crown Point.
Thank you. We have the minutes of the February 3rd meeting. They were published. Are there any additions, corrections, comments? If not, do I have a motion?
Move to adopt.
Second.
I got a first and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? So moved. Do we have any public comment today? I saw nobody signed in. Is there anybody here that wants to make public comment on any of the items on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the planning portion of our discussion. Mitch Barloga is going to discuss the Gary Elevated Trail. This is for informational purposes.
All right. Take off the blue blockers. Good morning. All right, so I'm here to give you an update, or at least give you an overview of a project that we are now trying to bird dog in the city of Gary. Maybe some of you are familiar with it through some of the newspaper articles we've had, but we're quite excited about the progress and where it's going. So this is called Gary Elevated, and a project, again, in the city of Gary regarding, of course, a trail. That's why I'm up here. But to talk about how this project hopefully will not only help the city of Gary, but also be a big boost to the region as we go forward. So let's give a little background of the Elevated itself and talk about why trails are popular. Of course, if you know me, you know this answer, but there are four major components on why trails have become very popular throughout the country, and here they are on these wheels. It's kind of like a, I don't know, a quadruple bottom line. Economy, health, environment, and community all positively affected by the placement of a trail in a particular town or city. I have been doing this now, dealing with trails when I was working in the city of Crown Point, now here at NERC for over 25 years, and I've never seen anything but positives regarding trail development, and sometimes extremely positive for that matter. So those are kind of the four wheels that help us sell the trail. Of course, that one over to the upper left is one I continue to try to push in this region about the economy and how trails are able to really help out a particular area. Why the Gary Elevated is, in my opinion, that very project that can help bring Gary back. So let's talk about what trails really can do. What you see here is the, let's see, do I have a laser pointer? Watch out, Kevin. I don't know if I know. Does this work? Oh, whoa, look at it. So this, put my glasses on here. So this is the city of Carmel, or as they say, Carmel. This is in Indiana, of course, and this is about, I don't know, 20 years ago. right there in the foreground is the Monon Trail. Many people are familiar with it. If you haven't been to Carmel in a while, this is what it looks like now, same area. So if I go back, that building right here in the background is that very same building right here. And you can see what has happened. The amount of growth, the amount of prosperity, and really the amount of community pride that has developed over the years. What they did right at the outset of building the Monon Trail was make a commitment to say, this is like beachfront property, we're gonna treat it like that. And that is what has developed in the city of Carmel. So, of course, we're trying to take that energy up here in Northwest Indiana. Many other communities, many other regions in the United States have done that successfully, and hopefully we can continue on with it. So we have this little project called the Marquette Greenway, you may have heard of it, and this is one of our major initiatives in the entire region from Chicago to New Buffalo. And this is March of last year, where it told you where we're at with regarding some of the development at this time. At that time, we had about 32 miles or so built. We're going to have well over 40 miles built by the end of this year, funded and part funded. But what you see here in this contiguous trail from one end to the other, right here in this blue bubble, that's for you, Kevin, right over here. Right there in that blue bubble, that is the extent of the Gary Elevated project. So let's talk about that particular area. So if people are not familiar with downtown Gary, you have Broadway, you have a transit station here, the rail cats play over here. But there's something that emerges that I think all of you can start noticing right off the bat. You see this? You see this? The smile, right? It's a nice smile. Come on, you see it now? There you go. See the smile? Anyway, that's the area of the Gary Elevated, okay? And to take a look at the map of how this will play out, you have two routes going on here. The Marquette Greenway is currently under development in this teal blue shade here. So right at this dot on the very right-hand side is Miller Woods. You have U.S. Steel, of course, up here, Miller Woods. This is National Park property. We have built pretty much most of it here east of west, that is, of the Adam Benjamin Station downtown. We're trying to get some money to finish off this project continuing west, and we do have different projects firing up this year. But as you can see, this green route is the Gary Elevated, and what it would be one developed as part of the Marquette Greenway itself. Both of them really will kind of have this loop within downtown Gary and afford a lot more residents of the city of Gary, especially in the Midtown neighborhoods, access to this very extensive corridor in Northwest Indiana. Right now, that northern route, as you can see, a bit jagged, but the part about it that is probably the most difficult to deal with in the city is its proximity to the residents. It's far off, well over a mile or two from the majority of the residents of the city, where the elevated cuts right through the heart of the community. And then there's even an extension here of the elevated that continues westward, eventually coming to the Ivanhoe South Nature Preserve that we'd like to connect into it. So with all my rambling, you can see all the possibilities and all these connections that the Gary Elevated really can bring to light. So let's talk about other examples around the country. You're familiar with the High Line in New York City. Again, I'm not saying that this is what it's going to look like. First of all, the High Line is not a bicycle route. It is all walking, and that is not what we're looking for with the Gary Elevated. But what it shows, again, is the power of transformation of these particular elevated lines, okay? This has completely rejuvenated the Chelsea area. It's probably the most desirable neighborhood now in New York City to live in by this elevated part. Right behind us, of course, is the 606 in Chicago. Maybe many of you have been on there. Maybe some people have been screamed at before from people on the route. I have. It is very busy, to say the least. And as you can see from the statistics, we have a lot of home prices have soared since then. Yes, there's an issue with gentrification in this, I believe it is Humboldt Park vicinity where the trail does run. It's about 3 or so miles. But the thing about Gary Elevated that is different from these two, which I'm going to emphasize, is that these are isolated segments. Both the High Line and the 606, that's it. About a mile for the High Line, about 3 miles for the 606, where the Elevated will be part of the 60-mile corridor. There's another corridor now being redeveloped or under redevelopment possibilities called the Englewood Nature Trail. This is what it currently looks like. Again, it's an isolated segment. It doesn't, this is all they have is about a mile of it. But even though they only have a mile of it, they're under extreme planning at this time, as shown here. The actual name of the corridor is, let's see if I can get this to work, the Englewood Agro-Eco District Land Use Plan. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but it's supposed to establish a nature trail along that elevated line because that's what the residents really want there. Again, it's not a connected route, doesn't go east or doesn't go north or south from that 1 mile segment. So they want to kind of keep it to just a natural walking path. But again, the thing about it is that they're really involving the community, and this is what I want to emphasize as well, that we are at the embryonic stages of the planning right now. We just put together the groups to identify momentarily and start looking at this in detail. But what's really important, of course, is making sure the residents of the city of Gary have a say-so in how this corridor is going to look and function for them going in the future. Exactly what's happening in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago. There are many other parts of that planning effort that makes it a comprehensive effort. We're not just building a trail, we are trying to work on a comprehensive plan to revitalize all different parts of that area, including parks, agricultural areas, neighborhood commercial centers, continues onwards with small local production and the economy there with residential and new housing and mixed-use development that is coming in. Other areas that they look at as well, of course, you have this type of design that is cutting right through the heart of the neighborhood there and all the improvements. So we're looking again for that type of energy to bring into the Gary elevated corridor and to benefit the city of Gary itself. So that gives you a background of our thinking regarding this project. It's going to be far more than just the trail itself, but how the trail is going to benefit the community around it. So let's take a little site visit. Okay, let's talk about what it looks like today. You're coming out of Miller Woods here to the right-hand side. You got U.S. Steel. Here's your toll road. Here's your U.S. 20. So let's talk about what's going on. I'm going to highlight some of the areas that are right here. You have a railroad track here. You have the toll road. You have U.S. 20. There's also another crossing here. Quite a few bridges are still intact, as I'll show you in a moment here. The first challenges, and we have, of course, several, is trying to reestablish some of the connections from the park into the city of Gary. Right now, as you see here, that dune used to be where the railroad existed in the old days. I think we're talking about the old Harbor Belt line that went through, that utilized the elevated way back when. I think the elevated has been shuttered for at least 50 years. David, is that about right?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, it was the Harbor Belt, yeah.
Thanks. I always need him to help me out. So, obviously, it's been out for a while. You don't see any abutments here. You see a nice sand dune, but that is what we're going to have to work with on crossing this railroad track with really one bridge. The next bridge that we're going to have to work on is the one over this, the Indiana Toll Road. You can see the remnants of the old Harbor Belt line here in the background. The abutments, it's hard to make it out, but they are still there, so a bridge could be conceivably dropped in on those existing abutments based on inspections. But again, we have at least the dirt in place to place a bridge to make this work. So we're not dealing with a lot of earthen ramparts to make this happen. Continue on into the city. If you're familiar with it, there is this old bridge that once you're on US 20 right off of I-65, you'll go under. It's had various advertising on it for years. This is part of the elevated, and very soon it's going to be, I believe, a mural will be painted on there thanks to a Legacy Foundation grant. So it'll be beautified shortly. Not so much now. When you get up there, though, lots of potential. It's very wide. As you can see, the landscaping is already there, right? Okay, so easy to get around at this point. Pretty sturdy. Again, don't look down, but you do have some very sturdy structures there that will work pretty well for the conversion to a bicycle and pedestrian path. Probably not holding a locomotive anymore, but pretty sturdy bridges that aren't going anywhere. You're actually looking north. Here is the way into the national park. So you have this wonderful gateway feature as you come in off of the national park into the city of Gary. Very excited about that. Some of those bridges look like this. We have maybe 2 or 3 that have this kind of old trestle look with the lumber and so forth that elevate over the community itself. different roadways. The roadway under here, one time was open, not so much anymore, and unfortunately it's become a bit of a dumping ground. But again, this would be part of the charm of the entire route. We're hoping that we could at least keep this bridge intact, give it some TLC and make it work up on the top of it. There you go. That's how it looks. I don't think you or I would be very comfortable walking on the right side of that, but at this time, you know, we did do some scouting up there and it seemed to be pretty solid. I think, again, I'm not an engineer and I know there's engineers in the room, so I'm not trying to trump your ideas on this one, but as I'm looking at it, there's no swaying of the piers and what have you. Things seem pretty solid. So we hope we can retain that again for charm and for the legacy of the corridor for the city. Now, we have some other opportunities along the corridor itself. In the background, you see the rise of the elevated there on that, within the trees there. This is a public park, which is right off of the elevated corridor. Behind us, numerous residents, very vibrant neighborhood exists behind us here. They utilize this park quite a bit. And again, providing a great connection to the community that we can utilize here and get people up on the elevated and connect into these public facilities in the city. Continuing through the central part of the corridor itself, this is Broadway, right down the center here. So we'll take a look at a couple of areas. Yes, you do need hedge clippers. I do recommend it if you want to go up there. The first time that we went up there was last November. And this project team that we've been able to assemble to look at the possibilities of revitalizing the corridor, it's always a good thing to have a site visit. And a lot of people were impressed, those that didn't fall down the hill trying to get up there. We have, Chris Harris is right here. He is redevelopment director for the city. He's been extremely helpful in working with us. And he actually had his crews out there cut down a lot of the shrub to get us up there. And we enjoyed it. You know, there's a nice view up there. It was a beautiful November day, so that didn't hurt at all. But it was a great day to really get up there and discover it. And several people were actually taken by it and were actually capturing that, feeling of, hey, this really could work out and we want to move forward with it. It does take a little bit of imagination to get there, but the bridge itself that you see here, at least over Massachusetts Avenue, has been inspected and has been cleared by inspectors to be worked on, at least for bike and ped use going forward. Concrete and steel bridge usually works out. Now, all of the elevated isn't there. I can't remember how many existing bridges are there. I've counted maybe 12, but there are a few that are down. One of the most prominent is on Broadway. They took the abutments and they turned them into some great murals. And we're hoping that we can reestablish a bridge here and possibly a plaza nearby where people can either enter or come off of the trail corridor and walk along Broadway, propagate businesses up and down the corridor there and take advantage of it. So that'll be a real node to work on over Broadway. Just west of Broadway, again, another trestle. Maybe not as strongly considered as the other one. This one seems a bit more flimsy, so to speak, but the other one didn't have iron. This actually does have a kind of an iron support underneath it, but again, it gives you a flavor of the kind of remnants that are out there for us to work with. Now, as you continue on with the elevated and you continue on to the northwest for the project, this is the kind of environment you have, and there's your breakoff. If you take a look at the maps, there is a bridge that goes over, I think, Grant Street and now Thatcher Street, correct? And then that continues on to the Ivanhoe South Preserve, as I had mentioned. Bridges look like this, very sturdy, very strong. That ain't going anywhere. I think that is over Hatcher Boulevard. And so, again, we have some pretty good facilities to work with. Again, pretty strong facilities. There is some, some crumbling. Of course, you would imagine that, some crumbling going on here. But I'm, at least myself, pretty confident that these bridges can be rehabbed successfully enough. So now, rehab bridges aren't cheap either. I realize that, and this whole thing wouldn't be cheap. But again, I think at least what we have there is a good starting point. And maybe if the bridges have to be removed, that's one thing, but you're not getting rid of all that dirt. And that earthen embankment is there. And so we're here to try to take advantage of that for the community and for the region. Now, bringing together the advantages, as I had mentioned before, one of the biggest advantages is the connection to the Indiana Dunes National Park, okay? From my estimates back in 2023, you have 2,700,000 visits per year. That's pretty decent, as you'd imagine, okay? And here is the route of the Marquette Greenway, as soon as it comes up, going right through the park itself. This is why the National Park is very excited to see this done. In fact, if you didn't know it, they already opened up a segment of the Marquette Greenway in Miller. It's all open. They even dropped a new bridge over Grand Boulevard, and it's about a 3-mile segment from the Douglas Center to the county line. And it is drop dead gorgeous. And it was a priority of the National Park because of this very issue of making all this connect. The Indiana Dunes National Park has to be one of the more non-intuitive parks in all of the system. It's like, where is it? And then you're there. So the trail connects all of these different parts of the park together. For years, they had a west and an east management section of the park, and the trail was always seen as that connecting element. And as you see here, over there to the very left, God bless you, over here to the very left-hand side of the screen, that is where the elevated will take place. So you're going to have this amazing amount of energy, people using the park, people wanting to access the park from the city of Gary, people coming in from the city of Chicago or from the Michigan Harbor country area and utilizing and coming down to the city of Gary and an elevated portion of the trail. Again, connecting to the 60-mile corridor, which we do not see any other elevated section do anywhere in this country today. So that is the unique part of this, constant energy, so to speak. And other things are being done too. Great work, great energy is being seen here. This is a report that was put together by the Notre Dame students. Very detailed report, architecture, layout here. And so we're hoping to work off of that. That, as you can see, is the downtown area of the city. They have proposed a new transit station design down there. They proposed new ideas of infill development and some design standards, repurposing the cathedral, the Methodist cathedral that has now seen its day in Transformer movies, but we're trying to get that a little bit more elegant and so forth. So we're hoping to use that energy and kind of buttress off, or at least piggyback off of that and moving forward. So let's talk about support in general here. We're providing planning as part of the approved objective of our Unified Planning Work Program. We're going up for another UPWP for 27 and 28 shortly here, but this was actually embedded in there, so it gives me the opportunity to work with the city on this project. We did get some Purdue landscape architecture students to work on a capstone project, which I'll momentarily bring up, supported by school program funds. We have additional consulting by Smith Group with funds by either the Friends of the Marquette Greenway NERC or Legacy Knight Foundation working with us. And we will pursue other funds. God bless you. Is it me? I mean don't be allergic to me today. Pursuit of Legacy Knight funding for community engagement. If you didn't know, this is what's called the Knight community. The Knight newspapers, Post Tribune was one of the communities, 26 of them throughout the country. So it is a unique funding opportunity for us to work with. So we do need to get into community engagement. But of course, I'm proud of talking about Purdue. It is my alma mater. This was the program that I graduated in a million years ago. So I was really excited to connect with them, to bring the students on board to start doing the project. And they are looking to do that and hopefully have some concepts for us to work with in a couple of months, and there they all are. At least half my age, probably more than that. But there we are actually on a segment of that trail that was right by the Douglas Center that has just opened up there in Miller. So great group of people. The deliverables on this project, it includes creating a design of the revitalized elevated trail, of course. We want to detail community connections to the trail, nodes, this third space, community areas for people to utilize. We envision adjacent land uses complementary to the trail with parks, plazas, and streetscapes. Of course, bridge revitalization ideas. We have plenty of bridges to work with. We want to provide conceptual images of the project for use for marketing and fundraising. That's the whole thing. We don't think that the Purdue students are going to produce the very final design for this project, but at least gives us an opportunity to at least market the project for grants and so forth as we try to build support for region-wide. And let me go back wayfinding strategies, getting people through there carefully and to make sure they are predictable for emergency services as well. And then we have our teams, Gary Elevated teams that we're working with. I don't need you to read all this. There are 3 major teams that we are working with right now. We're working off a model that is being currently employed in the city of Milwaukee with a core team, a project team, and a project coalition. The main core of all that is the project team itself. We meet monthly, and we meet at Jay's Breakfast Shack over there on Broadway, which has been a great place for us to get together. And so far, so good. We're starting to come together. We have a field trip to Milwaukee next week. About 23, 24 of us. I'm grabbing Mr. Wright. I think I'm going to grab my boss, and we're going to get on a bus and get up there and take a look at what they're doing in Milwaukee and get further inspiration of what to try to do here. So you're asking, where is this going? Let's talk about that. We got a little process here. So 2026, what we're talking about, we talked about with the monthly meeting with stakeholders. We'll get that Purdue study released. We're hoping to have a big May event, so be on the lookout for that. And we want to open part of that trail for public use, possibly. We will have an event that we're aiming for in April. It's on April 25th. It's Celebrate Trails Day, for all of you to know that for your own use and your own trails. But we hope to get about a couple blocks of the elevated open where people can get up there, they can take a look at it and start getting excited in their own right and get different site tours done. Come next year, we hope to have some money on board to hire a consultant for planning, feasibility, and document and commence the work on that end of it. Of course, continued community engagement all throughout. Complete the planning document in 28. Continue to open segments of the trail as kind of demonstration projects. Formatting got a little messed up here, sorry. Actively seek grants for engineering and construction and trail. 29, we hope that we can actually start going for the real meat and money to get this constructed. We want to secure grants again in 2030, hiring engineering firms to help with our documentation, get the engineering completed by 2032, and commence construction on a phase or phases of the project itself. Continue construction in 32, continuing to secure money. You can see the pattern here, and we hope, God willing, everything is done by 2034, and we actually have the Gary Elevated completed for the community and for the region. Beyond that, we want to continue the redevelopment strategies around the trail to, again, help with the revitalization of the community itself. And then, my fever dream, transfer the entire Elevated to the National Park, where they would be the maintenance authority, and you would actually have a ribbon of national park right through a major metropolitan area, which is not anywhere to be found in this country. That would be unique, to say the least. And again, just further bring more attraction to that corridor for people who are visiting. Okay, I think I've talked enough. Let me see. Yes, thank you. I do appreciate your time and hearing about this exciting proposal. Being a trail developer as long as I have, and also being a region resident as long as I have, this means a lot to me, where I've always been professing trails as being community elixirs, and now I can put that philosophy to the test here, right, in the heart of a Rust Belt community. So I'm very happy that Mayor Melton has been strongly behind this project, even though he is chasing the bears. Got to get him off of that baby and talking about this. But we are certainly on our way, and again, thank you for your time, and any questions about it, I'll be more than happy to take.
Two quick questions. What was the price tag on it again?
Oh, I don't know. If I went to a Home Depot, Jeff, and I'm like, hey, give me a break. We're in the $50 million.
50 million
50
range?
to 70 million.
That's
Keep in mind, the 3-mile segment of the 606 in Chicago is $95 million. They went nuts.
And who owns the real property now?
The city owns a lot of the pieces. The city owns, which is huge, as you know.
Yeah,
So the
railroad still owns some?
Some of it.
Yeah.
But there's some horse trading we're trying to work with. CSX owns, as you can tell from the actual corridor itself, we ain't revitalizing that for a railroad anytime soon. So the railroads would love to divest of themselves of that corridor like yesterday. And so Chris Harris is working with them, although we do have segments that are city owned, and that's what we're trying to open for at least demonstration projects at this time. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, well, you know where to find me otherwise. Thank you for your time.
Anytime you can give an optimistic report like that, Mitch, you're welcome.
Gotta be.
I did have the question, now you're working with Melton and the government in Gary, because if the National Lake Shore doesn't take it over, then the city becomes the owner.
Yes.
And we just wanna bear that in mind in the long run, but it'd be great if National Park can step up.
Yes, and we're working, you know, concurrently with the Friends of the Marquette Greenway. It is a thing. We have money to work with, and we hope to build up that reservoir of funds to help out with maintenance of this corridor in Gary, in Michigan City, in Hammond, wherever it's needed, to kind of supplement what's going on, because obviously we want to see this corridor maintained and safe from one end to the other. So at least we're working on that kind of private entity to take and to keep an eye on it.
Are they coming up with cost share too?
Well, we haven't advanced that far yet.
Okay.
We still are in the stages of getting the thing supported. And once we can get the community and the residents behind it, and then we can start getting grants and what have you, we'll be starting to get into the weeds on that matter, with maintenance and operations.
Thank you. No other questions for Mitch? If not, thank you, Mitch. We'll move on to Stephen Hughes. He's going to be addressing the amending Engage NWI program. That can be found on pages 4 through 28 of your packet. Mr. Hughes.
Hello. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Real quick, I'll go through the public comment report for this before I go into kind of the meat of it. We did, our public comment period is a 45-day public comment period on changes to the public participation plan. We received one comment. The whole thing is in your packet. Generally, the concern was, is this amendment going to make it harder for people to access the information? Our response is included, but the short version is moving these thresholds into the tip is actually putting them kind of in the place that is most helpful to those folks that might be interested. So we did receive the one comment. We did not feel that it was a substantial comment that required us to go back out for additional public comment period. And the comment and response are both in the packet. So the public participation plan is a requirement for MPOs, and it is to make sure that people interested in the process of transportation planning have a way that is spelled out for how they can participate in that process. This plan was initially adopted in August of 2019, and it was revised last year in August to reflect the updated committee structure. You may remember us going through that at that time. The only thing that is happening in this amendment is that it removes the thresholds for what constitutes a tip amendment, which has to go out for public comment, and what constitutes an administrative modification. This was suggested by our federal certification review last summer. Again, the whole text is in your packet. I believe on your page 24, you've got the red line of the text. But all that does is it kind of removes that information and tells you where to look in TIP for that. And we're recommending a favorable recommendation on the resolution. I'm not going into a lot of detail on that, sort of what those thresholds are, because that's in the next piece that we're going to discuss. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to address those, but I have a feeling the bigger conversation will probably be on the next piece.
Any questions? Please proceed. Well, I thought this was just for the information. But now we need to go to resolution 2604.
And that, yeah, sorry, that, I kind of combined those two pieces into
Oh,
one
okay, I
discussion.
thought you were just talking about public comment to begin with. And after all, this is a piece on public outreach and public
Right.
comments, so we want to make sure we do this thoroughly. Is there any other questions for Stephen on this?
And if I can just elaborate just a little bit, as Stephen mentioned, what we're trying to do with this amendment or this resolution and the following resolution, they're sort of linked together. We're simply moving some definitions from one document to the other. So we had to amend the public participation plan, and then subsequent to amending the public participation plan, we had to amend the TIP. So we're taking what Stephen described out of the public participation plan, and that's the first resolution. And then I'll explain the second resolution, which would then add them into the TIP.
So is that clear? But it's something that's necessary for us to be in compliance. The regulators asked us to do this.
So are we ready for a motion on 3.3?
Thank you.
Make a motion to recommend positive approval to the executive session in 2 weeks. The executive committee in 2 weeks.
To the executive board, and is that resolution 2604?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Can you make that part of your motion?
Please, yes.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? So moved.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to Mr. Vanderbilt. He will be playing the part of Charles Bradsky today.
Thank you. Yes, Charles cannot be with us today. He's at a
He's getting educated.
an air quality conformity training, so I'm going to present his information. So as we already kind of discussed, there are 2 resolutions, the first of which you've already voted to recommend. The second resolution is 2605, which is also amendment number 2605 to the Transportation Improvement Program. And this is the amendment and resolution which will take those definitions which you just recommended be removed from the public participation plan and incorporate them into the Transportation Improvement Program. For this action, there was a public comment period held from February 4 to February 25. We did receive 1 comment from Ms. Strelchik from the town of Munster.
I did not know how to pronounce that.
Oh, that's my best guess. And her comment kind of related to some pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure that she would like to see in the town of Munster. So we did respond to that and just let her know that that wasn't exactly germane to this particular resolution. But we forwarded it to the town of Munster for their consideration as they move forward with their own local planning. We also submitted this to the Interagency Consultation Group, which is a group made up of representatives from ADOT, IDEM, USDOT, and the EPA. They look at any TIP amendments to ensure that there's no air quality conformity impacts, and they responded back saying they had no concerns, and from their perspective, it's just an administrative modification. So from our perspective, it's a TIP amendment though, so we have to approve it by resolution.
And this is the resolution 2605. It just happens to also be amendment number 2605 to the TIP program. That can be found on pages 34 to 35 specifically.
Correct. And the public comment report is in the agenda packet under page 29 and 30. Are there any questions or comments related to the public comment portion of it? Okay. In that case, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is requesting approval, requesting a positive recommendation regarding resolution 2605. Okay, so now I will, so as I mentioned, this is part of a two-fold process in which we are going to take some definitions out of engage and WI and add them to invest in WI. So from the public participation plan into the TIP. And as Stephen mentioned, this subject came up most specifically during our federal certification review. And there were two recommendations that we received from the US DOT review team. The first was that we consider defining the thresholds for an administrative modification, which is a change to the TIP that can be conducted by NERC staff without public comment, without commission approval, and without any air quality analysis or ICG consultation. And the threshold between an administrative amendment and an administrative modification, which I just described, an amendment, which is a project change that does require public comment, it does require commission approval, and it does require ICG consultation. So they recommended that we add those definitions and those thresholds into our TIP. So typically that's where they're located. For whatever reason, NERC had them in our public participation plan. They thought that that would be a way to better sort of consolidate the information regarding the TIP into one document rather than having it spread into a separate document. They thought that'd be better for public awareness as to how we do things. And then the second thing that they noted was that our thresholds were the same for our locally sponsored projects as they are for INDOT sponsored projects. And typically INDOT projects have changes which are on a much greater scale than our local projects. So their recommendation, and so what that has resulted in is that a lot of cost changes to INDOT projects, which INDOT would consider to be administrative modifications, when we have to make those changes to our TIP, they become amendments. And so it's a much longer and more drawn out process for these INDOT projects, and it's just kind of created a lack of efficiency and some confusion between the two agencies because they define it one way and we define it another way. So they recommended that we have identical definitions and thresholds for INDOT projects in our TIP. Okay. Now, after having kind of received those recommendations, internally staff reviewed how we define these things, and kind of looked at some past history and determined that it's probably an appropriate time, since we're making these changes, to also revisit these definitions for ourselves to make sure that they are up to date. And specifically, we've noticed that cost increases have become a lot larger even for local projects due to inflation and other factors. So that's driving us to do a lot of amendments to projects. And then we also kind of reviewed the language of our definitions and thought there's some ambiguity in there that we can correct. So these are the current definitions for an amendment and administrative modification. And I'm just going to point really to one of them, one of the bullets here, which is under amendment. It's the second bullet, any addition of funds over $100,000. So anytime a project cost increases by $100,000, it becomes an amendment. And that means that it must go through the public comment process, air quality consultation, and commission approval. And again, that is across the board currently for both local and NDOT projects. That's really the element of the definition that we thought needed the most change. And then again, we do have two other types of amendments in our public participation plan. The first is a technical amendment, which just kind of changes, non-substantive language in a project description, or can be some of the language in the TIP narrative that reflects our performance measure targets that we adopt from time to time. That is a change that does not require public comment, but does have to be approved by the commission. And then there's also an emergency amendment, which is kind of a situation where if we're either, for example, have a bridge that needs to be repaired quickly because the public is at risk, or if we are getting to the end of the year and we don't have time to go through a TIP amendment process in order to reprogram funding, we can do an emergency amendment, and that allows us to just move a little more quickly. So the major change that we're recommending here, in addition to adding this text into the document, the major changes are highlighted in blue. So we've kind of changed the terminology a little bit. We have added this category of a formal amendment, and we just use that to distinguish between a technical or emergency amendment. So now a regular type of amendment will be called a formal amendment. And the two major changes, as I said, is the cost threshold. So we'll talk about that in next slides. And then, again, some clarity we added to some language here. So we wanted to distinguish between a regionally significant project, which is a project that has air quality analysis required. It's a non-exempt project. So if an amendment is, if a change to a project that is regionally significant results in the anticipated open to traffic year moving regional emissions years in the air quality conformity report, then it becomes an amendment. And then you'll see an administrative modification kind of says the opposite. And what that means is that, basically from an air quality perspective, as long you can move projects around within a certain band of years, and you can change the cost, and it doesn't affect air quality in any way. But once you start moving it into a different set of years for the analysis, then you have to rerun your regional emissions analysis. So those are really the major changes. They're actually fairly straightforward. But I guess the key information here is that we have, after discussing this with the Transportation Resources and Oversight Committee, TROC, about a month ago, just over a month ago, we agreed collectively that we would, in addition to changing the thresholds for NDOT projects to be identical to the NDOT thresholds, all of our local projects will be subject to the same thresholds. So for example, this is really the table that defines when a project moves from an administrative modification into the amendment territory. So if the project is less than $2 million in the TIP, it can be, cost can be increased up to 75% without having to take this through an amendment process, and then so on and so forth, going up to a project that exceeds $75 million, provided that it is, cost change would be less than 30%, it can be approved administratively. So Charles did a little bit of an analysis on the most recent amendments, and you can see here that there were, for example, in the last 3 amendments, there were 61 projects included in those amendments that were local projects. 51 of those, or 84%, would continue to be an amendment under this proposed new set of standards. 10 of those projects could have been completed as, project changes could be completed as administrative modifications. For INDOT, similarly, of the 90 projects included, 72 would remain amendments, and 18 could be processed as administrative modifications. So you can see it does cut off a significant number of projects that have to go through that more laborious review and approval process. And then just in summary, sort of the reason why we're proposing this, I've kind of already said it, but we want to more clearly define some definitions. I understand that's redundant. And that would help with public awareness. By including the text related to these revisions in the TIP, it seems more intuitive that people would look to that TIP document to find that information rather than a separate document. And then we would like, updating the cost change thresholds would lead to less confusion and delay for INDOT projects, reflect current pricing, and then just kind of simplify the process for all projects. I will say that at the discussion at the TROC meeting, there was a recommendation that these thresholds be revisited upon the adoption of the next TIP, which would take place about a year from now. So by including this information in that TIP document, it makes it a lot easier to revisit and revise those definitions as we see fit, if they are meeting our needs, or if we're finding them to be too restrictive or not restrictive enough. So we would recommend that this body forward a recommendation to approve to the executive board.
So moved.
Second. Okay. We have a first and second. Do we have any other discussion?
I have a few quick questions. The cost change thresholds, then those are INDOT's thresholds?
Yes.
Okay.
So-
And so that's the state thresholds that they use.
That's correct. That's how they determine for the STIP what is an amendment versus an admin mod.
So on one of your slides, though, you had 100,000 listed for an amendment. What was
That is our current
current?
threshold.
Okay.
Yes.
I knew it was low.
Any other questions or comments for Tom or for Charles, who's not here?
Yeah. If you have follow-up questions, Charles's contact information.
Either already asked Charles.
Don't flood my inbox.
Thank you. But Tom is very capable. Hearing a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to I think we covered everything, so.
So then, that's just.
Charles's modification report.
So one of the, and I can speak to that, so
Thank
in addition to the discussion of amendments and modifications at the TROC, the last TROC meeting, there was also a recommendation that staff provide a list of all of the, or a report rather, of all the administrative modifications that were completed over the last month. So going forward, we will be including that in the agenda packet. It's simply for your information. So beginning on page 38, you'll find that. I will say we don't have the full list in the packet, but there's a link in the email that was sent out, or it's like 300 something pages. So we didn't want to print that out for this meeting, but a summary of that is included in this document. If you want the detailed information, you can go to the electronic version of the agenda. I will say the vast majority of the changes were simply adjusting the ID numbers for transit projects, or a number of transit projects.
Thank you for explaining that, because I thought this was a very thin packet for what we received, but that was a good explanation, and we'll look forward to those reports in the future.
Yes.
I think that was a good
Thank
way
you,
to
Tom, and thank you, Charles, for this summary.
And all the staff for putting it together, but particularly Charles for working with us on that, because that was kind of a contention at T-Rock, that we want to be informed. Any other questions or comments on that? Let's go on to the next matter of reports from planning partners. I doubt that Dry Clean Indiana has anything to report.
Okay, with that, I'll keep it short. So there is a funding opportunity from the Indiana Office of Energy Development. I do have handouts. The applications are due on April 5th. It's about $1 million. There's $200,000 per application is the max. It's funding for energy planning, energy efficiency audits, and building upgrades, electric transportation infrastructure, and workforce development. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, or we can talk afterwards.
Department of Energy?
It's State Department of Energy funds, so it's handled by the Indiana Office of Energy. It's the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. Not all municipalities are eligible. The larger municipalities have received direct ECGP funding from the Department of Energy. Federally, they're not eligible. We do have our annual conference coming up during the NTA Work Truck Week show next week, March 11th, down at JW Marriott. Please feel free to reach out to me. We can get you registered. And that, I'll keep it short.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to any other business, staff announcements, upcoming meetings. There we go.
Hey, I think I've mentioned this before. I've mentioned before that,
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure. I'm not hearing.
Yeah.
that NERC and some other partners have been funded by the Lake Michigan Coastal Program to assist local governments with building better grant proposals, which can start from the beginning, you know, when you have a problem and you wonder if there's grant funds to solve it, or a grant you submitted before and not got funded. We can help with data. We don't want to actually write the grant for you, but we can help with data, with prep, with all kinds of stuff. And so there's a form on our website. You can click if you're interested. We're focusing on natural resources because that's our strength, but it could be mitigation, it could be resilience, it could be these energy efficiency grants that Ryan just talked about. There's a lot of different things we could help with. We have the, it's a lot of time from Jennifer Birchfield. She's a very experienced grant writer. Katie Hopgood at Save the Dunes is an experienced grant writer. I am sort of an experienced grant writer. So, and we have other people on the team. So please, if you just have something, it could be open space, it could be almost anything, probably not anything that's like concrete, you know, building. But take a look at the website online and drop an interest form if it's something you might like us to help you with. Oh, and it's not limited, unlike most coastal projects, not limited to the coastal watershed. We can assist communities down in the Kankakee for this project.
Yeah, so it's our sirens we're hearing, but we'll proceed.
Disaster preparedness.
Yeah, we're staying here. We don't have any other staff announcements or updates. And our NERC Executive Board meeting will be March 19th at 9 a.m. in this room. Our next meeting will be April 7th, 2026 in this room at 10 a.m. Anything else good for the cause?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just more of a statement, right? I'm frustrated that my local tracks project isn't on the tip, right? I appreciate the NERC's worked really hard to get that, but I was notified on September the 13th that we couldn't move forward with our environmental document because it wasn't on the tip. It was 3 months before NERC could approve an amendment, which I was grateful that they did in December, right? They approved the amendment. It's March, it's nearly 6 months from the time that we were notified that the project needed to be put on the tip. And it's still, it'll be 10 days from now, and we still haven't heard that it can be put back on the tip. It's just really frustrating that we can't move our project forward. I don't know if there's anything that NERC can do. I was at the executive or the full commission meeting in December, sort of appealing to NERC, see if there was anything that they could do to sort of help really the environmental document process, if there was something that could move forward. But this is really frustrating. It's 6 months of the inability to move a project forward and to combat residents who are against the project through the whole time, saying that they're doing everything that they can do to stop the project. The projects can move forward, it's just this administrative process that's extremely frustrating.
Specifically the NEPA process.
Well, that was my December comment to the full commission, was that, is there anything that NERC could do to help with improving the process or putting pressure on NDOT to perhaps, this was a recommendation I heard from another consultant, right? Can they start doing their environmental reviews with a consultant, right? Are they that backed up to do that? So that was a comment that I made. But this amendment process, right, is killing this project, right? It's delaying this project for no real reason other than a person at NDOT didn't update the tip to make sure that the letting date was in the current statewide transportation improvement program. Charles has said, hey, as soon as it comes in, as soon as it gets approved, I'll let you know. But we've been waiting for so long, and I just got to tell you, it's so frustrating.
I appreciate your frustration. I think we've made arrangements in the state to work with other states, or is that not the case? To review the NEPA procedures internally.
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to that. Okay. I can tell you that with respect to the December TIP amendment, we were informed that there was some discrepancy, I think, on a state project when they submitted our TIP amendment along with other TIP amendments and their own. So NDOT bundles those together and submits those to Federal Highway as a STIP amendment, State Transportation Improvement Program. And there was some error or something on a state project, a very minor error, but it was caught by Federal Highway Administration, and they sent it back to NDOT to correct. And because NDOT and Federal Highway both are currently, I guess, very short-staffed, it is just taking an inordinate amount of time. So we're aware of that situation. I think Charles has done his best to try to bird dog it, so to speak, and keep things moving, but we don't really have a good answer to you as far as when that NDOT Federal Highway issue will get resolved. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and just so everyone else kind of knows, like, this is one reason why it is helpful for us to have a more flexible administrative modification process too, because we can move things through more quickly, avoid some of the delay, at least on our end. And I think things do move more quickly. Administrative modifications move through that STIP process more quickly as well, more quickly than amendments do. So
it wouldn't help my project though, right? I mean, it fell off the tip,
yeah.
And now we got to put it back on. That's an amendment, right? It has to go through that process, and it's taking way too long, right?
Totally agree. It shouldn't happen. Unfortunately, here we are.
If there's any appeals that can be made up the line or something that, or point me in the right direction or something, right? I'll stop.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
feel your pain. We've got some other projects going on. But if we have any other comments, all of them are welcome still. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.